I was working late at the office. It was around 6:30 in the evening, and most people had already left for the day. I was finishing up a project when my manager asked me to come to the conference room to review some files. At first, this seemed completely normal. He was my direct supervisor, someone I'd been working with for about 8 months. We walked into the conference room together, closed the door behind us, and that's when I realized we were alone. The office was essentially empty. I didn't think much of it at the time. We had reviewed files in that room before, but this time felt different. He didn't sit down at the usual side of the table. Instead, he sat much closer to me than he ever had before. He started talking about the project, but his words didn't match his body language. He was leaning in. His hand was on the back of my chair. He was making comments about how dedicated I was, how attractive my focus was, things that had nothing to do with work. That's when my body told me something was wrong. My heart started racing. My instincts screamed at me that this situation was about to escalate in a way I wasn't prepared for. But I knew exactly what I needed to do. Here's how I handled it, and more importantly, here's what every woman working in an office needs to know. So here's what happened next. He moved closer. He asked if I wanted to stay late with him more often. His hand moved from the back of my chair to my shoulder. I felt the weight of it there. Everything in me wanted to panic, but I didn't. Instead, I got very, very still. I stood up. I didn't do it frantically. I did it deliberately. I moved away from the table, creating distance between us. My body was now between him and the door, but that wasn't accidental. I assessed the situation. The conference room is on the 3rd floor. The elevator is 30 feet away. The stairwell is 50 feet away. There are security cameras in the hallway. If I scream, other people might hear. But more importantly, I needed to handle this with authority and clarity because I work with this person. I can't just run. I need to set a boundary that will not be crossed again. He asked me why I stood up. I looked him directly in the eye, and I said something very specific. I said, I'm not comfortable with this. This isn't appropriate. I'm going to leave now. I didn't apologize. I didn't soften it. I didn't make excuses. I stated it as a fact. My voice was steady. My face showed no fear. I was calm and in control. He tried to say something, to explain, or maybe to convince me to stay. I cut him off. I said, I think we should have this conversation with HR present. Mentioning HR was important. It signaled that I was about to take official action. His entire demeanor changed. He stepped back. He said something like, look, let's not make this a bigger deal than it is. But I had already decided. I was done. I left the room. I walked to the elevator without looking back. I didn't run. I didn't stumble. I walked with the same confidence I had when I entered that room. The moment I left that building, I called my best friend and told her exactly what happened. I documented the conversation in a personal email to myself, time-stamped. Then I scheduled a meeting with HR for the next morning. Now let me explain why what I did worked. First, I assessed the situation. I looked at my options. I knew where the exits were. I knew there were cameras. I knew that security staff was still in the building. I mentally mapped out my escape route before I even moved. Second, I used my voice with absolute authority. I didn't phrase it as a request or a question. I didn't say, would you mind if I stood up? I said, I'm not comfortable with this. Statements are more powerful than questions. I claimed the space with my words. Third, I set a clear, non-negotiable boundary. I didn't say, maybe we shouldn't. I said, this isn't appropriate. I didn't leave room for negotiation or discussion. When he tried to argue, I escalated by mentioning HR. This signaled that the situation was now official, documented, and beyond his control. Fourth, I removed myself from the situation physically. I didn't wait for permission. I didn't ask him if it was okay for me to leave. I stood up and I left. My body language communicated confidence and certainty. Fifth, I documented everything immediately. I told someone I trusted, and I created a record of the conversation with timestamps. This is crucial in workplace situations because it creates a paper trail. If anything happens again, or if this escalates, I have evidence. Sixth, I reported it immediately to HR. I didn't wait. I didn't minimize it. I told them what happened and when, and I asked for their guidance on next steps. Why did all of this work? In the workplace, there's a power dynamic. He was my supervisor. He had authority. But I had something he didn't expect. I had authority over my own body, my own boundaries, and my own decisions. The moment I claimed that authority, with my voice, my body, my actions, and my refusal to minimize the situation, he lost control. He expected me to be confused, embarrassed, or uncertain. Instead, I was clear, calm, and decisive. In workplace settings, harassing behavior thrives in secrecy, shame, and silence. The moment you break the silence by telling someone, by documenting, by reporting it officially, the dynamic shifts. The person who crossed the boundary is no longer in control. You are. Another thing that worked. I didn't try to make him feel better about what he did. I didn't apologize or soften my response. That might sound harsh, but here's the psychology. If you soften your boundary, the person feels like there's room to negotiate. If you make them feel comfortable, they'll try again. But if you make it absolutely clear that you're serious, that you're going to take action, and that there's no going back, they understand there's nothing left to gain. Here are the 5 essential lessons from this situation. First, assess your environment. Know where the exits are. Know who's nearby. Know what resources you have. This gives you options and control. Second, use your voice with absolute authority. Don't ask for permission to leave or to protect yourself. State your boundaries as facts. Third, set clear, non-negotiable boundaries. Don't leave room for negotiation or softening. Fourth, escalate officially. Mention HR, call security, involve authority figures. This signals that the situation is now documented and beyond the person's control. Fifth, document and report. Tell someone you trust immediately.